Welcome to Startup Stories, where we go behind the scenes of some of the most interesting and innovative tech startups in the world. Each episode will bring you in-depth interviews with entrepreneurs and business leaders sharing their personal stories on success, failure, and everything in between. So whether you're an entrepreneur yourself or someone that's just generally interested in the world of startups, then Startup Stories is the perfect place for you to gain insight and inspiration into some of the most exciting players in the game. So sit back, relax, and join us on a journey of startup stories. Hi, Philip. Welcome to the Startup Stories podcast.
Hey, Jordan. Nice to see you. Good to be here.
Likewise. My pleasure, my pleasure. So for the listeners, could you give them a brief introduction into who you are?
Sure. So I'm Philipp. I'm the co-founder and CEO of LI.FI, short for Linked Finance. We are a multi-chain middleware. So essentially, any business that wants to interact with crypto, no matter what that means. That means no matter on which blockchain it's happening, no matter which asset we are talking about, you somehow need to access it, you need to move it, you need to move information and assets across these different chains. And for that, we have developed a middleware. We are a 40-people company. We have raised $23 million over 3 rounds over the past 2 years, have been growing pretty fast. We are serving the largest wallets in this space and large corporations that are about to touch crypto. Spent the past 10 years building companies in B2B software as a service.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is not your first company, is it?
Yeah, we my co-founder and I, his name is Max, he's my CTO. We are both very technical. We met when we were beginning our 20s. We spent 5-6 years building Stomped, which was a B2B software as a service in the gaming industry. After that, we tried multiple things in biotech, and after that, in marketplace intelligence. And we learned a lot along the way, and specifically around data. So everything was very data intense, and that's kind of our specialty. Backends.
How old was you when you first started your first company?
Oh, my first one when I was 15. I was never employed. I started my first company during school, second one while I was graduating, and then I met Max, and from there on we worked together.
Oh wow, okay. So it's been a long journey together, which is good.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I want to understand is, you're doing what you're doing now, which is fantastic. It looks amazing from the outside looking in. But I really want to know who Philip is, what made you the person you are today. So for me to understand that, I want to go back to your childhood. Take me back to your childhood from your earliest memory.
Earliest memory, really hard. I grew up in a loving environment, so I'm pretty grateful for my parents regarding that, if you talk about the earliest memories. I also grew up pretty free, so my parents allowed me to, jump into the lake or do whatever I wanted to when I was small, so even though it meant it would become dirty. And at the same time, I was always very energetic, driven to do things. So I was a lot playing outside most of the time. Building things in the forest, or running a lot, climbing a lot, these things, I was always trying to be good at things. That's certainly something I can say. I was always trying to be the best in everything, except school. So school was really not my thing. It was the one thing where there was an authority suddenly telling me what to do and telling me how fast to think and digest. And I think pretty early on I noticed that this is just not the way I want to grow and learn. And I never got out of that mindset. So I was a really bad student, but discovered early on what I wanted to do. So I started programming when I was like 12 years old, and I really focused on that. Programming, hacking, and that was kind of my thing. You say that school wasn't your thing. Was this throughout your entire schooling life, or was this in like your sort of senior years? Entire school life. High school. Whenever there was an authoritarian thing above me, it was problematic. It might have started in kindergarten. It's literally school and also university. I was at uni. I studied business computing, which is like a mix of economics and informatics. But I literally learned a few days before the tests, and that's it. And spent most of the time just building companies, working as a freelancer, making money, and it was kind of a side thing. So I really enjoyed the time because I made plenty of good friends, but essentially it was good parties and a lot of work, yeah.
I want to try and really work out why you had an issue with authority, because the reason why I'm asking that is because I feel very similar into what you're saying, and I know my sort of reasonings, but I'm curious why you felt like, you know, authority was not a good clash for you, and you like to do what you did.
I always felt it was hindering me in my own progression. It felt too slow. Everything felt too slow, and I'm very impatient with myself and others. So in school, it was always it was not about having a hard time keeping pace with the class. It was the other way around. Like for me, it was just a burden to have to wait, or to have to keep pace. You know, to adjust to that pace. It was just like, yeah, and also I think there are different learning types, right? And I'm pretty good at learning, man. I'm pretty good at learning, but that frontal education system we have, like a teacher in the front, and this is kind of it was not the right way for me, and I think learning by doing is hard. I do believe we need an education system where we all learn certain things that should be basic math, basic foreign language. Like for us, like having grown up in Germany, English was important, and I wish I learned it earlier. And so we started from the 5th class onwards. Nowadays they learn it in the 1st class. I wish that would have been different back then. But yeah, education is a huge topic on its own.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I really resonate with what you were just saying there. No one size fits all is absolutely the answer. Children should be, from a very early age, taking a few tests to work out what way they learn best, and then go down that route, because no two people are the same. So yeah, completely agree with that. Okay, so can you take me or can you think of a pivotal moment in your life that's essentially made you the person you are today, or had the biggest impact on who you are today?
There were certainly multiple ones. I had to repeat a class because I spent all my time doing just I didn't attend tests anymore. Even I was really not an easy student in that sense. Well, I was easy by not being there, right? So I had to repeat a class, and that certainly had an impact. Changing my school. I at some point I wanted to change school. I didn't feel comfortable in that school I was in. I didn't like the teacher. I didn't like the mentality. It was just nothing felt right. Neither the people nor the teachers. And it was so far away. I had developed myself so differently at the same time while school was happening. I was really into skateboarding, programming. Those were my two things. And as I mentioned, I'm extreme in the things I do. So there was this very strong desire to follow my passions. And it was also really hard for my parents, actually. I feel sorry when I look back. It must have been really hard for them. They must have been worried. But I knew that, with this programming thing, with the web, I felt so much at home on the internet that way. And building this and being able to develop websites, trying out different business models. I tried all of it, from affiliate marketing to search engine optimization game, and all of that what you could do beginning in the 20s, it was super exciting. Not beginning 20s, beginning 2000s and onwards. So this was kind of, so repeating the class was a thing. Changing school was a thing. And then stopping to work on my first company, I got funding for. When I was graduating, I got a very small funding. I think it was 25,000 or something. But I was 18 or something. 17,
Yeah, wow.
18. for me, it was a lot of money, right? I didn't pay myself salary. I just had a first employee back then. Developers were much cheaper back then, actually. and he was 20 years older. It was, but the business partner I had back then, I felt left alone. He was kind of a business angel, but I expected too much from him. His role was to be the co-founder, and I didn't see that in him. And we didn't have enough money to actually do more. It was that all of that was not enough. Was just like, yeah, it was one of the hardest lessons to learn, that you need a strong co-founder. That was a hard lesson. And on the co-founder side, I had many lessons, by the way, during the past 10 years. It's crazy. It's the toughest part of all of it, I feel. Finding a strong co-founder you can trust, and that's complementary to you, but at the same time you have enough overlap that you have no communication gap. That's what Max and I are having, and this is worth so much. Sorry, it's a lengthy. I didn't think about that question for a long time.
No, it's great to reflect, right?
Yeah.
So, Max, then you said you've been aligned with each other for quite a while. When did you first meet?
So, 2012 or 13, there was a flood in Passau, which is a city close to Munich, small city, student city, 50,000 citizens, 12,000 of them students. I lost my apartment back then. I had a shared flat, and most rooms got underwater in the first floor. So it was the biggest flood in 500 years or something. So
wow.
Almost 30 meters high of water. So it really, so it destroyed half of the city. As a result of that, the students had to clean it up. So because they were the fittest and youngest, right? So it was about like we had to shovel out the mud of all these apartments, and there was a lot going on, and it was very uncoordinated. The university back then tried to coordinate that alongside the city, but it was very inefficient. So I sat down at a friend's apartment, and I wrote an app. To coordinate people. You could, without having to have an account, say, hey, I need 5 people with shovels at this address. And then people could say, I'm coming with 2 people. And so it was like a matchmaking, an anonymous matchmaking on coordinating people. And the university picked it up, the city picked it up, and there were other cities that also were flooded. They also picked it up. And Max, my co-founder then, I didn't know him back then, but he was working at the university in a faculty of informatics. So he wrote me an email. I was like, hey, man, can I help you? And I was like, yes. And then he pretty quickly refactored the code, and it was so much cleaner afterwards. I was like, okay, I can learn something from him. That was a good first experience. And then a few months before I was in Berlin for 6 months, I had an idea which was like for a feedback solution. And it was, after all that was done, I was approaching, hey, I have that idea. Why don't we work on it together? Compared to me, Max was the complete opposite. So Max was always like the best student in his class. He had, I don't even, how do you say this? Let me look it up. He had scholarships and grants, and because he was so good, multiple ones, and he has, I think he's even jumped the class and all of it. So he was complete opposite, but we had the same drive channeled in a different way. Mm-hmm. So while he was learning, he was good in school, and he was also learning to program. I, at the same time, learned all kinds of online marketing disciplines. I knew everything back then that was available about search engine optimization, search engine advertising, affiliate marketing, how all of that works technically, writing trackers, tracking pixel, whatever, all of that stuff. Like I knew how that works and how to implement it. So we had that business savviness combined with that thoroughness, and Max is a very grounded person. I'm a very energetic, driven person. So it was like different personality profiles, but a huge technical overlap. So there was always like no communication gap in what we wanted to accomplish together. That was incredibly valuable. It's still today we can always, there's no communication gap because the technical overlap is so big, and that's worth a lot. Yeah, but that's how we met. And then we started working on this. I more than him because he still respected his study. I didn't. So so it took us a while to get him in full time. So I organized that we actually got a scholarship from the German state and university, like a founder scholarship. We had that then, and that's where I got him full time. But it took me 2 years to get that.
It's a very interesting story though, and you've been going 11 years strong, so all looks good. Okay, so you say, how do I say it? Li.FI, is that right?
Man,
Li.FI.
You're gonna laugh about this, but essentially, so it's called Li.FI because it's short for linked finance, right? So it makes sense if you shorten it, it's Li.FI. But I mean, we're mainly selling or talking to Americans, or we're speaking in English all the time. So Li.FI is just so much easier. We're actually having the debate to simply make it easier for the world and call it Li.FI. Maybe that's probably
it flows more naturally, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But also there's a Wi-Fi competitor called Li.FI.
Oh, really?
So yeah, it's wireless, but with light. It only works in very close proximity, but it's in industrial environments. It can be used. You wouldn't use that at home, but we kind of discovered it too late. And because we came from linked finance, and we shortened it to Li.Finance, Li.Finance, which was the first domain, and then we got access to Li.FI, like a 4-character domain. I cannot recall a second brand that has a 4-character domain. Come on. So I had to get that one. It took me 6 months to get that domain, actually.
God, that's a long time.
That was a nerdy dream come true to have such a short domain. So I had to stick with the name. There's no way around that.
Yeah, that is good actually. Okay, so talk to me about your path. That you've had multiple businesses before. But tell me about your path that led you to found the company Li.FI or Li.FI. Tell me about that.
I don't know if the path so much plays a role on this specific company in a sense. I think it's pretty clear, like we have always been founders, always been seeking topics that interested us. The gaming thing kind of happened naturally. I think Stomped, which was like that feedback platform, it was a feedback social network. So it was a very idealistic, let's make the world better idea. That's also why it didn't work. These ideas almost never work. Right? It was a very idealistic idea. We at some point shaped this towards the gaming industry, which is very community driven, or is supposed to be, or community intense, let's say at least that. So we kind of tried to sell on community driven development, as a community driven game development. Didn't work. Took us a while to figure out. We also made so many first time founder failures back then. It was ridiculous. So we learned a lot during these years. It was very, very painful, very painful. One of the hardest thing for me to realize that's not it. Then after that, biotech. I always found bioinformatics super interesting. My father is a biochemist. My sister is a biotechnological assistant. At home, so the topics they were not even that present, but some of the topic was there, and I find. I always had a very strong interest in health, longevity and all of that. So this whole idea around working with genes and RNA was super intriguing to me. And then being able to use my technical skills to help cancer patients, that was amazing. The idea to dive deeper into that. Unfortunately, the biotech space is very reputation driven, and you need a chief scientific officer. That person is more important than the CEO. In that chief scientific officer has to have published in certain journals about certain topics. Only then he's trustworthy and has credibility enough to build in the space and find clients. So you are dependent on a third party, and if you want to go on cutting edge topics, we did neoantigen prediction back then, which still today is cutting edge. Back then, very early. It was like trying to find a unicorn. We found one. We tried for some time. We failed. And also coming from the web, moving, fast-breaking things. In biotech, that doesn't work. People are very cautious about their reputation and cautious in general because we are talking about human data, human lives, and all of that. So move fast, break things, that mentality doesn't really work there. So there was a strong conflict in mentality and culture. It was really hard to align with these people. We tried it with 2 different teams. Didn't work out. We moved on, and we went into marketplace intelligence for Indonesian online marketplaces. Max and I always had a favor for automations, so writing a huge bot system that would crawl all kinds of data from websites was kind of a thing we liked. We did that. We were too early in that market. We smoke tested actually, so we had good numbers on the smoke test. We were very cautious if we want to go down that road or not. But just because the value proposition works doesn't mean that the product in the end finds adoption. We were simply too early in terms of how the market functions. And after that, a friend of mine called me and was like, hey, can you help me out with an NFT project? And I was like, NFTs, NBA Top Shots was hyped back then, beginning 2021. And so there was a hackathon going on. We did that for a weekend. And then we were like, it's super hard to build in the Web3 space. And then there was another hackathon called Scaling Ethereum. And we were looking at blockchain throughput rates, which are way too low to scale for humanity, right? You're like, okay, the future, at least for a certain period of time, has to be multi-chain in some way. And we had so much experience with databases. So kind of, it was pretty clear to us. So we did another hackathon that went on almost a month, 3 to 4 weeks, full-time, all about scaling technologies. And we thought if this ecosystem is supposed to grow up, someone has to aggregate these services and abstract it away. And that's what Li.FI is doing. That's a long story to it.
That's very insightful. Okay, so you're, it's 2 years last month now? Is that right?
Yeah, 2 years last month. Yeah, from zero to...
Did you do anything to celebrate?
No, I didn't. I missed when we actually started. But it's sort of actually, it's hard to pinpoint down the day we started working on this. But yeah, we literally like May 12th, 2 years ago. So today is May 12th, right? We probably just came out with a prototype. First prototype, something like that. About to release it 2 years ago. And then in July, we raised a seed round, 2.7 million. And then 6 months later, a bridge round, another 2.5. And it's crazy how fast all of that went. And then another 6 months later, we started working on the Series A, which took us 7 months. The market fell apart. It was so hard. I spoke to 340 investors for our Series A.
Wow.
340. I flew to Amsterdam. I met some Jewish family office that asked if they can invest in cash. I spoke to everyone. I spoke to Sequoia China, to Sequoia India, to Sequoia US. My lead investor from the seed round was recently telling me, Philipp, you exhausted the market. But we did it. Now we're good for 2.5 years. But it was a pain in the ass.
Sounds crazy. What do you do then? So like when you're looking for like your Series A, what's the first action point? Do you start networking on LinkedIn or with communities to find investors? No, not at all.
It all works introduction driven. First, I do my homework. Pretty a concise pitch deck, a blurb. A blurb is like a small text, like an elevator pitch in writing. People can write to introduce you, and a data room. A data room that contains all the links to everything that represents you, from your LinkedIn profile to the website to the Twitter account, a small primer on the valuation and what we are raising money for, links to our financial projections, links to our org chart, do your homework. Being very structured about it helps a lot. Then we have a target list, so what our desired lead investors. And then a list of all the investors we know, and all those people who can make introductions. Then you start pitching to investors you don't really care about. which is good because your pitch will change a lot, and you will be able to tell based on verbal reactions and body language if your pitch is too long, too short. And at some point, you reflect on each single word you're saying. That story becomes so clear, and the story also changes. In the beginning, you speak at length. You pitch 5 minutes, and in the end, I pitched. I don't know, 45 seconds in the end. That's what we are building.
Yeah.
Bumps. And then, like all of that is a lot of practice, takes a lot of practice. And that changed a lot. And you can optimize a lot around this. Yeah. And then you have to work your network. You have to get introduced to people. That's the only way. And everyone who likes you, where you have the feeling they like you, ask them for an introduction, for more introductions. And that's how you build a network over time. But I did that full time. So I had days where I had 8 calls in the morning and 8 calls in the evening.
Wow.
Like 16 calls a day. Yeah.
It's what it takes though, right? If you want to achieve things like this.
Yeah. Yeah. One more thing, maybe it also, for first-time founders, this is incredibly hard. You don't have the network, and you don't know how your pitch deck is supposed to look like, which information belongs in there, what is too much, your data room, doing the homework, how to present. There are so many micro skills around this. Like, this is just a whole thing. You have to do it over and over again. First-time founders are rarely successful. If you really are an entrepreneurial personality, you have to do it again and again and again and again, and eventually you have a strong network. People recognize you from pitching 4 years ago, things like that, and these things are helping you out. And it's just I think fundraising is just a skill on its own, and you have to embrace it. You have to understand that getting a no is the default, right? So don't get frustrated just because you just got 50 no's.
Yeah, I'm really happy you explained that to me like that, because, I thought funding was like, people see how good of work you're doing in the market, and they can see your company going about, so they reach out to you. I didn't realize it was to the extent of what you just said. I mean, yeah, maybe for like the pre-seed or seed round when you're unknown, but yeah, I didn't realize it was quite like that. Very, very fascinating.
You want to get interest, and then once you have refined your pitch a bit and you feel more comfortable, you already collect intros to your potential lead investors. So essentially the way it works is you need to get your basic setup. You have your desired lead investors. First, you do your basic setups, you do a few rounds of pitching. Then in the meanwhile, you gather potential introductions to your lead investors. And then you want to get introduced to them all at the same time. And because you want to create internal competition. That's very important. Like in your round, you want to create competition. So at some point, you talk to all these desired lead investors at once and try to get term sheets. Once you have a lead investor, other investors will follow on. It's very easy to get follow-on investors. So they simply say, hey, all right, that guy did the due diligence. Okay, fine, I'm in. I simply trust that firm. I'm coming in. But you need to prepare yourself to be able to talk to these lead investors, because once they said no, they're going to stick with it. There is in general no turnaround. They don't want to lose face in their decision. And
yeah, I can imagine. Okay, so what's been the I mean, hopefully you don't just say getting the funding, but what's been the hardest challenge building LI.FI?
The right processes around everything, from funding to hiring people, finding good talent and filtering good talent and not getting scammed and not wasting time with bad talent this is hard. So we are very strict by now on how we hire people. There is no hiring without a test week. Not a single one. Yeah. Right? Only if you do test weeks amongst a variety of candidates, you will be able to even differentiate and distinguish different skill sets and skill levels. And it's so simple, actually. So we do paid trial weeks. And that's but you have to fail a lot to realize that, because you think, that guy was nice, I liked him, like, let's hire him, right? Like, that's how you go for it. Like, oh yeah, culture is important, we have to vibe, it's all right. But no matter how much you like a person, you have to be able to see how much attention to detail, how is that person thinking, how is that person working. And a simple task you give to everyone helps you to get the full range. I can give examples if you want to. It's amazing.
Yeah, no, that's a really good way of doing things. So you do a paid trial week, or is it a paid trial first month? Okay, week. Okay,
no,
cool.
Paid trial week, just a week. I'll give you an example. Let's say we hire an operations person. We would say to them, hey, we want you to create us a payroll in Excel. Just a payroll database where you track your employees and how much salary they get. The amount of, like the variety of the results go from a written text, here's how I would do it, not sending in anything, to a basic table that just has 5 columns without colors. The next one does the same with colors. The next one actually has a history so that you can actually track salary changes and bonuses. So it's like it has a pivot table, an aggregated table where you can see how. So whenever you want to change someone's salary, you add a new entry, and that table always takes the newest entry of each unique person in that table. Things like up until Visual Basic scripts. We had everything, the full range. And then you can see like how much forward thinking are these people, how experienced are these people, because a week is we have a limited time. How important is the role to them? Like you can attention to detail, experience level. Also, I think like what people expect from themselves to deliver, right? And this says a lot about their attitude. It's amazing. So even for the most simplest roles, you think, always do a test week. And same for code. We see if they document the code, how well they describe what they have done, how is the indentation, and is everything clean? How do they name variables? What's their attitude towards their own work? And we pay them for that so that there's no excuse, right? We pay you for this week, and you just go for the one task.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good idea.
Yeah. It does a lot.
It makes so much sense. So then there's no stone left unturned then, and you know for sure what you're getting yourself in for. Because you're absolutely right. Someone could look amazing on paper. They can also come across really well in the interview, even in person. But then when they actually start, it can be totally different. So it makes a lot of sense. Okay. So let's flip it then. What would you say has been the key to LI.FI's success so far to date?
Exactly that. Hiring the right people. Without my team, there wouldn't be no chance. No, it's simply, I think, having a strong leadership team, of course, is a premise. But then making the right hires that are as driven and hungry as you are is as important as running the marathon yourself. And there's no way around hiring the best talents we can find. And actually, our first hire was a good old friend, and then the second and third hire were 2 Indians, still with us. The one is our head of research. The other one is our jack of all trades solution architect, Akshay. Shout out. From there on, we went with recommendations from them. So Arjun hired Mark. Mark was a recommendation from. Mark and Arjun worked together in the past and things like that. So they were like, But also, I think, so we have 40 people now, but we have been we have hired 70. So we have let go of 30. Crazy. But now, like, we only kept the good ones. So the team we have right now is high quality, 40 people, driven and reliable.
Yeah, that's an interesting method, to be fair, because one would say, although that's a lot of people that you've let go in a small amount of headcount, but at least that shows that you're not a company that settles for the average, because a lot of companies hold on to a lot of people for a long time, and that can actually be the detriment to the business's failure.
It was all in the beginning, right? Since we are more strict about hiring, the fluctuation went down to almost zero. Yeah, we haven't let. Yeah.
No, it sounds like the right thing to do, so that you're not just, as I say, wasting time.
Yeah,
really good.
learning curve.
So what's been the highlight of your journey so far then?
Seeing the whole team in person the first time. We did our first company retreat beginning this year in Thailand. And for me, it was really touching to see a huge group in front of me. It was unreal. And it was just like, and then seeing that we were all vibing. Like this was, of course there were internal conflicts that came up once we saw it in person. So I had one-on-ones with everyone. So there were conflicts that were coming up, but the overall group dynamic was amazing. And to see that after 2 years of remote work, it would actually be that way. We had so much fun. We were very productive. At the same time, we were going out, we had fun, and it was just an incredible journey.
Yeah, that does sound incredible. It reminds me of a story I spoke to a guest a couple of weeks ago, Sven. He said the same thing when we just had a nice party, and one time he just sat there and felt emotional to himself on his own just to look at his team and see what, everyone coming together for the first time. So yeah, I completely get that. It makes it feel more real, right? When they're all together and you can see it in person.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, looking forward to the next company retreat. Let's say that. It's also expensive to fly in 40 people. Yes,
I can imagine. Thailand as well, long haul.
Yeah, but Thailand is a cheap country,
Yes, it's cheap. Yeah, I've been to Thailand.
That was a cheap choice. that was already okay, we can do it there.
Yeah. Yeah. Cheap once you're there, but the flights are obviously a bit expensive because it's long haul.
Yeah.
But beautiful country. I went there in 2017, 2018. Beautiful country. Really is. So
yeah, true.
What's the goals then? The ambition for Li.Fi? How far do you want to take it?
Oh, $1 billion company for sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, no question asked. No brainer. Will be
nice.
Super big.
I like that. Straight to the point. So, Philipp, then more on you actually. So, you've done what you've done with Li.Fi, which is fantastic. You built this 40-person team, amazing. Hit this 23.5 million funding. But what's your personal motivators? Why do you do what you do to this very day? What motivates you to get out of bed every morning and do this all over again? I
feel I'm at the pinnacle of freedom. It's exactly what I always wanted to do. Now I can do it. Of course, it is not freedom. It is not freedom in the sense I can do whatever I want and take days off whatever I want and as much as I want. But I love everything around this because as the company is growing, you in your role have to constantly question yourself and it's also from a personal growth perspective, it's amazing. Because you constantly have to question the way you communicate, you have to change, you have to adapt, you have to be very empathetic. It will increase your skill sets in a sense of being more empathetic with people. They have different needs, different risk aversions, and desires and hopes, and so that, but also, of course, your soft skill set from pitching to being on stage, on panels, communicating, taking care of yourself, managing, finding balance in all of this. I think in the first year I gained 10 kilos. I lost them again. So I'm finally close to being in shape again, but it took me some time to even realize, oh my God, take a look in the mirror, Phil, what happened to your face? So that took some time. This whole journey is the process is amazing. The process, and then finding progress in everything, and it's a constant challenge.
I love what you said about freedom, though, because I'm trying to understand what you meant. I feel like I know what you meant by the word freedom, because like you said, similar to, I'm not on the same scale of you, for example, but I have my own business too, and I know that you need to have all of those hats and adapt, like you said, and I can't just go take a day off whenever I please, because as you say, some would argue that's not freedom. But from the way you said it, the way I interpreted it was, it's freedom from a mindset standpoint, like being able to create what you want and put it in the way you would like it and all that sort of thing. Freedom to flourish as a
exactly. It's like
your purpose.
I think. I mean, there's always so there's this discussion around AI also, right? Like, what would happen once most of the tasks are automated and gone? What would happen? Well, people would have time to be creative again. That's how our brain works. And building this company, having that venture capital, is the pinnacle of freedom for me, because I can express my creativity in the way I want. Some people like to paint. Some people like to play the piano. I also love to do that, by the way. I would love to do that more if I had more time. but building the company is also a form of being creative around problem solving, constant problem solving on all levels, strategically, emotionally, with yourself, with others, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I really agree and resonate with that totally. Here at Montfort, we're always thinking of new ways to be the best recruitment agency out there and stuff like that. And you really, similar to any field, the principle is the same. You have to learn to adapt and be better. Otherwise, you will get left behind in any field that you're in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter also how small your business is. Is a reason why I've never felt like I want to be employed. It's simply because I never was willing to give up that freedom or that being able to be creative. Even sometimes if it meant to have really boring freelancer job, I hated to do. But I maintained my freedom and my flexible working hours and all of that. And it's always a sprint. It's always a crunch. And I think, it sounds very boring maybe, but it's like, I think life is like a constant path of suffering so that you can find happiness again. Like, and this is just life. If you realize that, like, choose your battles, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Choose your battles. So I was always confident enough that at some point things will work out. Sure. So I simply believed in Max and me.
Yeah, literally, as I always say, with pain comes pleasure. Seek pleasure first, you'll run into pain.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Well, last question then, Philip. What's one bit of advice you would give to someone who's thinking about starting their own business?
Talk to potential clients. And be super hard around if there is a willingness to pay for what you want to build. And there are so many good ideas out there that do not exist for a good reason, because they simply are good ideas, but not good businesses. So you have to differentiate between good ideas and good businesses. So you have to ask yourself, is this a potentially good idea? Yes, it is. Is this a good business though? Different question. Definitely different question. And business means, does it make money, enough money? Does it make enough money to pay myself? And if you cannot do it yourself and you need more, would it make enough money to pay for all that? That's like what you have to ask yourself and then find a path towards it. But I think that's the most important question. So many people waste so much time with ideas that simply will never work. Oh, not now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really
timing is
interesting way of looking at it. That's very true as well. Yeah, well, Philip, thank you. It's been a real pleasure to have you on. I loved hearing about your story, and I look forward to following LI.FI from afar and see how far you really take it. Can't wait till you become $1 billion company one day.
John, thank you so much. I really like the questions. It was actually, I think, the most personal podcast I've given, like question-wise. So I never spoke that much about my past anywhere online. So thank you so much. It was an inspirational conversation.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Take care.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Startup Stories. I hope you enjoyed hearing from our guests and learning more about their journey in the startup world. I'll be back soon with another exciting episode featuring a new guest, so make sure to subscribe to Startup Stories so you never miss an episode. Also, don't forget to follow me on social media for updates and additional content. And if you have any suggestions for guests or topics you'd like to hear about, please reach out to me. And as always, I appreciate your support and feedback. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.